Hello and welcome to the weekly Dinosaw. This is week 18. Slightly different this time in that what I normally do is I compile a full month. I'm giving you the snippets of that. I'm just going to make it more current, so I'm going to give you stuff that I've seen in April. So that's all. That's a good thing. So it's latest stuff. So what follows will be 7 interesting, curious, and hopefully innovative things you might want to see this week. Let's crack on. So the first one is Wi-Fi 6, slightly confusingly, nothing to do with the Gs, so the 3G, 4G, 5G of your mobile. Wi-Fi has its own numbers as well, just so happens to be on number 6. Now last week the FCC have voted for, I think it was this week actually, voted to free up an entire new band of radio waves and the 6 gigahertz band for Wi-Fi. This is unregulated as well, so you don't need to apply for a license to put any of your devices communicating on this bandwidth. So if you are following your Wi-Fi's or you've got a router at home, you've seen the numbers, you'll get 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, and that's pretty much where we've been at, and now we've got a whole new 6, so this is big news. So what this really means is if you see the Wi-Fi 6E signal, it means it's Wi-Fi 6 standard, and the E means it's now got access to that new band as well. A little bit of sort of hygiene in this one, in that 2.4 gigahertz, while might not have a huge amount of bandwidth and speed, essentially it can go through a lot of walls, so it's great for home. 5 gigahertz is much faster, has a higher bandwidth, and it doesn't get through walls as much. 6, obviously, if you follow the flow, will be brilliant if you've got 2 devices in the same room, for instance. Be super fast communicating data between the 2, but it might not get through 3 walls, for instance. So it wouldn't be brilliant if you've got a house with your router in a substantially different place. So really interesting. This is going to free up a whole load of bandwidth and free the congestion that we're currently getting on certainly Wi-Fi bands as well. Slight change of pace, so this is all about soap. So this is Save the Children, who are or were trying to promote sanitation in displacement camps in sort of war-torn areas. Obviously, one place to start this is getting children to wash their hands. So a really novel approach to this is to put small toys in clear soap. And if you can see the toy in the middle, and essentially you've got to wear the soap away to get the toy, then it turns out it made children wash their hands 4 times more than regular soap. So the toys, by the way, are various toys. They went into the local area and asked children what they would actually want, and then 3D printed the toys and then put them in the soap. So very, very simple, just stuck them in a pot. But I just thought, there's a lot of technology you can throw at a problem. Sometimes you just need a couple of dinosaurs in some clear soap. So really nice one. This one is a really interesting study about that aha moment, or really, what makes us as a species more creative. So it turns out that actually when we have these kind of breakthroughs, these aha moments, when we find new insight, that we actually trigger the same pleasure receptors as something like drugs or chocolate or whatever it is. We have this kind of rush. So that's fine. Now the reason you're seeing these slightly funky GIFs here is because it's happening so fast in your brain. It isn't a thought about system, it is actually a biological system. That's basically what this is showing. So it's a thing. We've just discovered that the synapses fire and you get this pleasure response. Now where creative people are slightly different, it turns out, is that you have what's called a reward drive, a higher reward drive. So if you're tuned in to finding more of these basically responses, and as soon as you have this pleasurable effect, you want another one, another one, another one. So that's what's a high reward drive. Some people just go, that was nice, but I'm not really interested anymore, thanks very much. So more creative people, more people who are driven by finding these new aha moments, tend to have a higher reward drive. So the interesting sort of outcome of this is, if you're looking for people who are creative or potentially creative, you're looking for people with higher reward drives, rather than, because now we know that everybody really just has this biological response. So quite an interesting report, and some funky GIFs in it as well, so go and have a look at that. Japan has launched a blockchain court, and this sounds probably more funky than it really is, but an interesting development really. The way this really works is you put essentially an agreement, a business agreement, goes onto a blockchain. It is publicly held; people can see it, or at least the two sort of parties can see it. You agree to certain terms, and that's pretty much how it works. So that's great. Everything chunters along. Nothing's really happening until you find your partner has maybe not delivered some widgets, or the paint was the wrong color, or whatever it is, and that was the specific terms of the contract. So all you do is you basically say, we agreed it should be blue, you delivered red, you have broken the terms of the contract. You then essentially apply to the blockchain and say, this has been broken. And the blockchain then says, well, we can see the other party has basically said, yeah, sorry about that, I did. And it will then automatically essentially adjudicate using an algorithm and apply whatever the fine or the judgment is. So it's relatively simple at the moment. What it's not doing is it's figuring out what colour the paint is and all that sort of stuff. You have to tell it that, and then the other person has to go, yeah, sorry, it was us. But what it is doing is it's cutting down on a lot of the legal kind of red tape, I guess, or the process. So if it's a very simple structure that you want from your deal, and you want a very simple yes no from it, and you both agree to it, then great, this is a way of doing it. So look out for more of this, if that made any sense whatsoever. It was a big week in Fortnite last week, I think it was. So Travis Scott released his new collaboration, which is called The Scotts, on Fortnite. So Fortnite, if you've been living under a rock, is a game, and essentially last year, I think in February last year, another artist, Marshmallow, did a live DJ set and attracted 10 million viewers, which was groundbreaking. So Travis Scott broadly on par with that, if not another 2 million viewers. So the way this worked is you couldn't avoid this. This was just going to happen regardless. You did sort of know something was happening because there was plenty of noise around this event, but nobody really knew what was going to happen. So if you were in Fortnite at the time, this happened to you. A big portal arrived, and the sky changed colour, and everybody was sort of very expectant. And I won't spoil it. So click on the link, go and watch or find Dan TDM and have a look at this. He's got the whole thing from start to finish. But it was, really, really interesting. All of Travis Scott's current tracks, as well as the new one, everything started to sell more, etc., etc. So if you are in the world of promotions, then Fortnite still seems to have it. Really, really interesting. So go and have a look at that. I'm going to also try and explain Bitcoin halving as well. So Bitcoin halving will happen, or the next Bitcoin halving will happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks. The 12th of May is when it's predicted, and it's a little bit vague because it depends a little bit, but essentially pretty much you can predict it down to the minute. Now, not a lot of people realise that when Bitcoin came out, you might have heard of Bitcoin mining. So a certain amount of Bitcoins are released at set intervals, 10 seconds, whatever. And every about 4 years, or I think it's something like 210,000 blocks, every time this happens, every 210,000th, what they'll then do is they'll sort of halve the amount that are being released. So it's already happened twice so far. So the third halving is happening in a few weeks' time. So this keeps happening, by the way, up until 2140, when the last Bitcoin will actually be released. And therefore, essentially, we're done. Whatever it's so, not a lot of people realise that Bitcoin will eventually run out, and then we'll deal with it whatever happens in a good 120 years time. But what normally happens around a halving is people get a little bit worked up. People don't really understand what's going on, start buying and selling and all sorts of stuff. So what generally happens is everything's fine. The people who mine Bitcoin know it's coming. They realise there'll only be half as much around. I think it's going from 12.5 every 10 seconds down to 6.25 every 10 seconds. Everything scales down. It's all sort of built into the economy, basically, and that's what the genius of Bitcoin really is. So if you've got Bitcoin and you haven't looked at it for a while, you might want to just start to log into your account and have a look and see what's going on over the next couple of weeks. You'll see it start to ramp up. But probably those with cool heads, hodl, hold, whatever you want to call it, keep them safe for now. And finally, Unicode 14 is going to be delayed. So what is Unicode? The Unicode Foundation essentially are responsible for the ginormous font in the sky that essentially a lot of applications and websites use. So part of this ginormous website, and it has everything from Hindi to Spanish, special characters, to ISO characters, to ancient Hebrew, all sorts of stuff are in this ginormous font. Basically, the Unicode Foundation every year decide what new fonts are going to be released into it, because it's a big thing, and also that's where emojis are. Emojis are part of the Unicode font. So every year it's agreed about April, earlier in the year, what's going to go in, or it's released at least what's going to go in, and by the autumn they're actually start to become out in the public. So you'll start to see probably October, September, the new version 13 emojis released, and there are some on the screen right now. However, due to COVID, the ratification of the next year's is going to be delayed. So version 14 won't be ratified in 2021 and available in autumn 2021. It'll actually be the year afterwards. So if you're a massive emoji fan and you want your emojis next year, there won't be any, unfortunately. However, it's a good time to call out the fact that there will be new emojis this year, of which this is probably about, I think there are 64 of them. So this is probably about half, if not 3/4 of them right now. And thankfully there's now a pot of tea, so that will be super useful in our house for our WhatsApp group. There are, let's have a look, transgender flag, tying the knot. We've got flip-flops or thongs, whatever you want to call them, and we have a plunger. And we have Mrs. Claus at last as well. So, and we even have some bubble tea. So if you're a big fan of any of those, even fondue, then these will be coming to your phone or to your web font later on this year. But don't get excited next year, it won't happen. And that's been it. So thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next week with some more Dinosaw goodness.